Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's Fix or Fail, this is a very poorly laptop which we're going to try and fix up and spring it into a little bit more of action. It is dreadfully slow at the moment. The model of this is down here. I'm going to have to get the microscope out and look because it's in such fine print on the back, and I can't remember what the model number is. But essentially, this is a Hewlett-Packard laptop. I think it's the 15 series. I think that's pretty much right. Again, you've probably seen it from the description below. This comes with a, I think it's a dual-core processor, maybe 4 threads, 4 gigabytes of RAM as standard, a 1 terabyte mechanical hard drive, and Windows 11. So not particularly a recipe for speed. Now, talking of speed, I have actually recorded already on my phone to see how fast it takes from a cold start, just pressing the power button, to get into Windows, and it's getting on for kind of a minute and a half, 2 minutes. So it is pretty slow. Opening things up is awful. Now this is actually our daughter's boyfriend's laptop. He is a painter and decorator, and this thing gets abused. So it goes around different sites, etc. And when he's on his lunch break or whatever, for catching up on things, Snapchat, that sort of stuff, watching YouTube videos, hopefully Mike's Unboxing, obviously. Yes, it's not very happy. So it's had a little bit of damage, as you can see from the keyboard there. The dog actually chewed off one of the keys. A little bit of discolouring on here. It was actually a lot worse than this. It was absolutely filthy when we originally got it, and you'll probably notice that it's got a cracked screen as well. Not entirely sure how that happened, but luckily, generally when he's using it actually at his own home, he plugs in an HDMI cable and kind of displays it onto a larger screen. So the screen itself isn't so much of an issue. If you do want to replace the screens on these, you're looking at somewhere in the region of about £50 for the actual panel itself, then just dismantling it. It's relatively straightforward thing to do on these HP units. Most of it is all just clipped together. It's relatively plasticky construction, which sadly is another reason why we've had to do some other things to this. We'll take a look closer when we actually take it apart, and maybe you'll be seeing some B-roll now. I have had to already do some modifications to the charging jack. These are very commonly getting destroyed, so I've actually put some JB Weld type stuff in there, some chemical metal type thing. We actually did a video, I think it was Asrosil or Abrosil. We've actually put some of that in there. It's basically a 2-part epoxy putty, and that has just strengthened up the charging jack, so now it charges properly. Previously when it came into us, wasn't charging, basically wasn't doing anything at all. Also, again, you've probably seen this from the B-roll I've already shot, the actual Ethernet jack as well, the flap here. This actually now works as it should do. There is actually a metal clasp that goes on there over 2 plastic prongs, and that was obliterated as well. So potentially it's had a little bit of damage in this area, hence why the actual screen is damaged, especially in this area. So it all seems to be concentrated around here. Whether it's been knocked, hit, I'm honestly not sure, and he's not sure either. So today's Fix or Fail is essentially to see if we can breathe some life into this thing. Now, when it comes to the actual RAM that this uses, it's using DDR4 SODIMMs. We've actually got some SODIMMs. I've actually bought one already in advance. Unfortunately, as you'll see when we take it apart, there's only 1 physical RAM slot. Unfortunately, due to the nature of the processor in here, which is an Intel processor, it only supports a maximum of 8 gigs of RAM, which, yeah, is not great. So obviously 8 gigs, that's the most we can get. I was tempted to just order 16 to see if it would work, but I think doubling the RAM from 4 to 8 is going to be absolutely fine. Something else we're going to do as well, which I think is desperately in need of and always breathes a little bit of life into these things, and that is to install an SSD in here. Now, when we install the SSD, generally when people bring a laptop into you, they want to keep all their stuff. In this particular instance, fantastic news, we don't have to, so we're going to end up doing a completely fresh installation of Windows 11 and basically taking it back to its roots. So I think that is a good point to actually start stripping this thing down and get the RAM installed, get the SSD installed, and we'll get on and we'll come back later on and you can see if it's actually made a difference. Spoiler alert, I think it's going to make a massive difference. The boot time is going to be massively improved and the usability is going to be much better. And of course, it's going to have a fresh install of Windows, so it should feel a little bit nippier. Anyway, so I'm going to change camera angles and let's get on with it. Okay, so this is the laptop, got it flipped over. I've got some microfiber cloth on the desk just to protect it, although realistically, I think those days are gone. So these are actually relatively straightforward to open up. You've probably seen this before with the HP 214 that we've done. So we've got 3 screws here, and there's also another one on a bit of an angle, just on this side. So actually let's take that one out while we're over this side. It's actually very fortunate that Hewlett-Packard, in their wisdom, whether it's by accident or whether it's by design, all of the screws on this for the actual base are identical in length and size. So if you pull them out and you're not too sure where they went, it doesn't really matter a great deal. Something which people often overlook or just don't know about is the fact that these rubber strips here actually do have screws under them as well. So what you want to do is get a flat bladed screwdriver, and all you need to do is just gently lever these up. Once it starts to go, you can basically just pull the whole strip up in one constant movement, and there we go. These are actually different sizes as well. So the one at the front is a smaller profile, which you probably can't see very well from the camera. I'm going to put that to one side, and let's do the same with the rear one. Like I said, they are different sizes. Actually, this one don't want to come out. There we go. So you can see, hopefully you can just about see the profile of that is a little bit thicker. So the thicker one goes on the back, and obviously the narrower one on the front to give it some elevation. So now at this side there's 3 more screws, and down here there's 4. So let's go ahead and pop those out. Now once all the screws are removed, we can flip the unit back over and actually prise it open. You can see with these, they're really flimsy on this top panel, so if you can, try and open it from the front there. And what you're going to want to do now is get a plastic spludger or some sort of plastic tool and basically go around this outside edge and kind of just lever it open all the way around, and it should pop open. So I don't have my spludger with me, so I'm going to grab one. Okay, so got my little spludgers. So what you want to do is to just gently get in here. You can see it's going to crack and it's going to pop open. It does make some pretty awful noises, but don't worry, it is absolutely fine. And literally just go around the whole of the exterior. Sometimes when these are a little bit worn, it gets a little bit easier. And if you want to, whilst you're going around, you can give it a little bit of encouragement. Just wiggle that spludger around in there. If it feels like it's stuck, then there's a chance that it actually is. There we go, that's better. And it's catching a little bit on this side now. And there we go, a couple of little wiggles, and you should find that it all comes apart. Flip that back down. So now we've got, this is the back side. Now actually I'll just quickly show you what I've already repaired. So this section here, there was a kind of like a piece of metal that went over some plastic parts, and that wasn't working, so basically just reinforced it. So now you can see this all moves, but the chemical metal is kind of holding it in place, so that works absolutely great. And this section I'm incredibly pleased with. So this is the DC charging jack here, and I have put a little tiny bit of chemical metal just there next to the board and onto the jack, so it just holds it in place. So this is not going to move around at all. It's really firmly held in. You can see there's a little bit of residue there from the gluing process, but it's just kind of like a dusty residue. So anyway, while we're in this position, we can actually get in and remove the drive and also the RAM. So the RAM, you can probably already tell where that is on the board, which is over here. So in order to remove the RAM, that is really simple to do. So we'll just spin that round so you can get it into the shot there. And you've got 2 little lugs on the outsides there. So just pull them apart. And the RAM will kind of spring loose, at which point you can just wiggle it out a little bit and put that to one side. And we've now got our integral RAM, which we'll put in. So this is double the size. That one was a 4 gig. This is an 8 gig. Oh, and it's in a rather sexy black color. So literally the same. Unfortunately, it has to go in this way round. So match up the lugs. There's a little lug just there. There's a lug just there. Hopefully you can see those. So look there. This is where there should be another RAM slot. So in theory, at some point, some models would have a stick that goes kind of there, but obviously this isn't, so there is an arrow there. So all you want to do is to mate up those two places, push it in so it's on a little bit of an angle, slightly upward. You can just about see there, so it's on about a 15-degree angle, and all you need to do is make sure it's firmly in and firmly press down, and you should hear clicks on both sides. So if you're not sure, just give each side a little press and it should have locked into position. So that is that part done. That's very easy indeed. Next bit is going to be taking out the hard drive. Now, I've never taken one of these out actually, so I'm not entirely sure how easy this is going to be. Looks like someone's possibly had to go at this already at some point because it is quite loose in there. So let's just take out a couple of these screws. This is one of the main retaining screws on the top. So we're going to take that one out. And this one's going to have to come out as well. So that's the two retaining screws. I'll put those there and there so we know where they've come from. I'm guessing this bracket is going to come loose then. Yep, that just lifts off. So that holds that in place. So there was a little plastic tag in there, just there, which you probably couldn't see, but basically just lift it up off. It comes off reasonably easily, just a little wiggle. So now we should be able to just lift this drive up very slightly and remove it from the board. So a little wiggle, put a bit of pressure actually on this motherboard here, or the daughter board that it connects into, and then you can wiggle the drive out, obviously making note of where the SATA connectors are. And there you can see the drive, so that's a little 1 terabyte Western Digital drive. So put that to one side because that is actually still working, and we may be able to use that for something a little bit later on down the line. So the drive itself wasn't actually being used hardly at all. There's only literally a couple of gigabytes on there. So we're actually going to replace it with this I'm not sure if the X is as S. Traditionally in Chinese, X is pronounced sh, as in Xiaomi or things like that. I can't think of any others. So this should be Fan Shanga. I don't know. Anyway, it's cheap. So we're going to stick this in, and again upside down, so that just slots into there. Give it a little wiggle so it goes all the way down, so that is firmly seated in there. We can now put the bracket back on the top, and then put the screws back in. Now this drive is actually slightly narrower than the previous one, so there is going to be a very small gap in between the top deck and the drive itself. That is why when I put the screws in, you could see it actually rising up a little bit, because it is a slightly different height, but yeah, it's not a problem. It'll be absolutely fine. So that is essentially it. That is our upgrade done. So we've now got our extra RAM, got a hard drive in there, so now we can snap this back together, stick Windows on, and give it a blast and see how it goes. Okay, so we're back, and I'll be honest with you, it's the next day and I've completely no idea where we left off on the video. I'm pretty sure we've just installed the RAM and also the SSD, and it was waiting for a fresh installation. So installed Windows 11, completely fresh installation, the latest version, which I think is 22H2 possibly, not entirely sure, but anyway, it is on there, it has worked. There was a very weird thing at the very beginning when I actually tried to install Windows, and it came up with a weird error saying that OOBE keyboard failed. So for some reason it couldn't install the localization for the keyboard. No idea why that was. Rebooted, tried again, exactly the same thing again. So skip past that, done all the usual stuff, and it actually seems to be a-okay. It appears to be working, and it is actually a lot more usable. Now, earlier in the video I did mention about the processor. The processor is actually a Intel N4000 processor. It is a dual core processor, no hyper-threading at all. It has a clock of 1.1 gigahertz and a boost clock I think of 2.6 gigahertz. So it's obviously not the fastest machine out of the block anyway. And the model number I think is the DA00015 or 7A or whatever. Anyway, you're seeing it on the screen at the moment, so you know exactly what the specs is. So obviously this thing isn't going to set the board on fire, but it does appear to be working and considerably faster. So let's start the machine up now. I have actually recorded this separately with my iPhone, timing it. We're looking at under 30 seconds now to boot, which is much better than the previous kind of 2 minutes plus that it was. So we press the start button. Something else we don't have is hard drive noise anymore, which is always a good sign. The battery is fully charging now, which is excellent. We've still got the same issue where we've got a damaged screen, but this is actually going to be used connected up to a TV via HDMI, so we don't really have any real issues there. But this fires up, but it now runs very nicely, and it's fired up in, yeah, basically about 20 seconds plus, so much better than what it was previously. And also the screen is working. If you click on something, it opens up. It's not rocket fast, but it gets the job done, and you can open up things and they actually do work. Try some YouTube videos, which again you're probably seeing for some B-roll, which we did a little bit earlier. So playing back videos is absolutely fine, which is basically its primary use going forward. So overall, this is one of those laptops where it's a very difficult line that we're treading here between, is it basically e-waste or is it worth actually repairing? Now, ultimately, that is going to come down to the individual and what they see or their perceived value of the laptop is in a working condition. This is significantly better, and we've only invested somewhere in the region about 30 to 40 pounds. So we've added an 8 gig stick of RAM, which prices will be on the screen now, and also a 512 SSD. Those are particularly cheap at the moment, so it's actually a good time to do this kind of thing. Infinitely better than the hard drive that was in there previously. That was causing a lot of the bottlenecks, I'm pretty sure. SSDs always do make a significant difference. The weird thing about this is you can pick these units up in their default configuration on eBay, things like that, for about £100. So clearly it's a very difficult thing to do. Do you take the 30, 40 pounds that you were going to invest into replacement parts and put it towards a better model, maybe sell this on for kind of scrap value almost in the condition it was in, I don't know, 40, 50 pounds if you're lucky, and then potentially get something else, maybe it's a little bit newer, better processor, etc, etc. Like I said, ultimately it's going to come down to the end user, and if you're watching this and you're in a similar situation, you've got possibly this model or very similar, and you're thinking, what do I actually do with it? For me personally, I think if the screen is working, it isn't damaged, and you just want to do the upgrade for the RAM and the SSD, currently as prices stand, I think it is very much worthwhile doing, and hopefully it will give this unit a few more months or potentially years of life in it. So there you go, that's going to wrap this one up. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, smash the like button. If you want to see more content like this on a daily basis, hit subscribe and the chime notification. You'll be notified of future video releases, and if you can, share the video, it all helps the channel. So I've been Mike, this is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.